Hello, and welcome back to James and the Frames. I'm your host, James, and here I talk about some of my favorite frames ever filmed. Now, last episode we did a film from 2014, but this episode I'm going to be reviewing actually one of the more recent films to come out this year, the 25th James Bond film, or the 26th if you count those parody films. Uh, No Time to Die, the final entry in the Craig era of Bond. After almost 2 years of delays, it's finally out in theaters, and I got the chance to see it last week, and it was amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm gonna do what I always do, but first I'm gonna do a little introduction. I never really do introductions here. I kind of just jump right into it. For this episode, we're gonna be talking about No Time to Die. We're also gonna be talking about Squid Game. We're gonna be talking about Spencer. So Squid Game, it's the new Netflix show everybody's talking about. It's super popular. I'm probably going to go really in-depth spoilery about it. And honestly, you can't really talk about that one without spoilers. So, Squid Game. And then, of course, we'll be talking about Spencer, the latest Pablo Larraín film. It stars Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana of Wales, and it takes place over a single weekend at a Christmas holiday retreat where she decides to leave Prince Charles. This is a film I will be talking about spoiler-free because it hasn't been released in theaters yet. I got the chance to see it at the San Diego International Film Festival. It was great. For some of you who are new to the podcast, I write for a website called Film Snob Reviews. You guys can check that out whenever you want. I do more in-depth, spoiler-free reviews over there, rather than my rambling, spoiler-filled discussions I do on here. I love writing for them. Shout out to William, if you're listening. I love you, man. And I had a great time there, great audience reaction, and I'll be talking about Spencer as the last film in this podcast episode today. But first, let's get into No Time to Die. Now, No Time to Die, as I said before, is the final entry in the Craig Bond era, coming off of the somewhat lukewarm reception that Spectre had with Bond fans. I enjoyed it. It's been a while since I've seen it, and maybe I'll rediscover some of those gripes that fans have with it, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great mix of the Craig Bond and the Moore/Brosnan Bond. Seemed a bit more fun, seemed a bit more jumpy aroundy, not too concentrated on the roots of Bond and getting deep into the character's psyche and all that, because Skyfall did that brilliantly. I don't think that Spectre had to do that. So it was an overall fun movie. And some sequences for sure they're dumb fun. They don't make a whole lot of sense within the context of the more grounded Craig Bond story, but they were still enjoyable to watch. So No Time to Die, it takes place about a couple months after Spectre. If you guys have seen the trailer, I'm not going to be spoiling much for you. It's clear that in the opening minutes of the film, there's an event that happens with Bond and Madeline, his new love that he rode off into the sunset with in Spectre. He goes off the grid, and he is recruited by Felix Leiter, returning from Casino Royale and from Quantum of Solace, although he had somewhat of a smaller role in that one. Loved him in Casino Royale. Jeffrey Wright, dude is awesome. He returns to recruit Bond to help him in tracking down this weapon that this big bad is using, and he just needs his help. And, it's the come out of retirement or come out off the grid and help me this one last time sort of thing. And you know what? It's actually not, cliche here. It actually makes sense for the story and for Bond's character. And to continue my spoiler-free review, I thought it was a great send-off to Craig's Bond. The action set pieces are phenomenal. They're extremely well shot as well, and I'll get into that in my spoiler-filled discussion in a second. But Fukunaga, Kerry Juju Fukunaga, the director, he used 65mm to film the scenes, which gives it this really classic Bond feel, like from the Connery era and to some extent the Moore era, like that film grainy look. Really cool. Makes the film look beautiful. The performances, as always, they're great. Everyone does an amazing job. Craig is, after this film, he's my favorite James Bond. I was on the fence. For those of you who saw my post on Bond, my ranking of Bond actors, I put Dalton and Craig at the top two. I put Craig first because he's the one I kind of grew up with, and he's the one that's always fresh in my mind when thinking about James Bond. But Dalton, I can't remember how many times I watched the opening sequence of Living Daylights. It's just one of my favorite openings. I really like seeing Bond in training and like that whole conspiracy. Anyway, I'm not going to ruin it for anyone who wants to see it, but License to Kill also, great truck chase at the end, very Raiders-esque. Love the brutality of that film as well. I think Dalton was sort of like the grandfather to Craig's Bond in terms of authenticity to Ian Fleming's original character, who wasn't really the jumpy, jokey Moore or the charming but also sometimes goofy Brosnan. Brosnan's only spectacular Bond film is GoldenEye, of course, but the rest of his films don't really sit with me all that well. And of course, Connery. Connery is sort of like a mix of both. And then there's Lazenby, or Lazenby. I'm going to go with Lazenby because that's the pronunciation I've heard the most. I've said Lazenby forever, but I guess that wasn't the right way to say it. He's a great Bond too, and his film, On Her Majesty's Secret Service in particular, there's a lot of parallels in No Time to Die to that film, which I'll get into in the spoiler-filled discussion. But anyways, No Time to Die, it's really good. You should see it in a theater, first of all. I wouldn't wait until this comes out on streaming. I mean, if you really wanted to, you can. But this is a theatrical experience. It was a really thrilling theatrical experience for me. And I can't recommend going to see this in the theater more. So there's no time to spoiler-free review now. We're going to go into the spoiler discussion. That pun was intended, and it probably didn't sit well. But hey, I really don't care. So yeah, No Time to Die was really great, and I mentioned that there were a lot of parallels to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And one of the big parallels is the theme of loss and death. It plays a big factor in No Time to Die. I'll get to the biggest factor in a second here, but I started to realize how vulnerable and mortal these characters were in No Time to Die once Felix Leiter gets killed. And that was a surprising death. And it really heightened the stakes and made the possibility of death, of losing a fan-favorite character, all that more real. And I don't think this would have been as effective if I weren't as invested in Craig's Bond after his 5-film story arc, which is so unique for the character because up until the Craig Bond era, I don't think there were any two films that had a linear storyline in the Bond films. I think there was mention of Bond's ex-wife who passed away and maybe a couple of the Connery and the Moore films, but in terms of a character journey over the course of several films, I don't think it's been done before. And to have big characters like Felix get killed off in the last entry, that really heightens the tension of everything. And of course, we get to see that at the very end, Bond also bites the bullet. He has a self-sacrifice moment. It's probably the most emotional I've ever gotten in a theater, for sure, because I grew up with Craig's Bond, and it was a very touching way to see him go. But I've been noticing how a lot of people are not happy with this ending, and they feel like Bond should have ridden off into the sunset or gotten out just in time and gone into hiding secretly, like he's still alive, like that sort of thing. Like the Dark Knight Rises version of it, like Bond somehow gets away from the nuclear explosion and goes to live in Italy. That doesn't happen here. You see him get blown up by the missiles. And Hans Zimmer, in the meantime, is absolutely destroying it with the score. He is perfecting, savoring this emotional climax with his strings and the beautiful piece. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Final Ascent or another track. Zimmer really knocked it out of the park with his score. And I think this is the most fitting way for Craig's character to go, because Craig's Bond was always about the subversion and the reinvention of the classic Bond tropes. Like in Casino Royale, when they ask if he wants his martini shaken or stirred, he says, "Do I look like I give a damn?" Moments like those are what made Craig's Bond so unique and stand out. As opposed to other Bond films where they escape by the skin of their teeth and they get a happy ending, Craig's Bond kind of gets a bittersweet ending. And I think it's fitting for his character because it's not something that would happen in another iteration of Bond. If you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, the same thing with the shaken not stirred, do I look like a give a damn line. It applies to the situation of, oh, I'm gonna get out of here by the skin of my teeth and ride off into the sunset. That doesn't happen here either. And I thought that was a great way to end his way as Bond, and to have the self-sacrifice he does for his family, which is actually really interesting. That No Time to Die is more about family than it is about spies and gadgets and stopping a global weapon. It ultimately comes down to family, and Craig's Bond sacrifices himself for his family. And it kind of happens, I don't think it happens abruptly, because it's kind of built out throughout the entire film. And the writing here is brilliant as well. There are certainly some sequences where it felt like they were written by other writers, and I totally get that, some standalone sequences, but that didn't really bother me all that much. And going back to the parallels with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Bond's death here is a parallel to Bond's wife in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That was the first. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is actually a really underrated Bond film, and that ending is as shocking as it is important for the Bond character. And another great parallel to On Her Majesty's Secret Service in No Time to Die is the score. Hans Zimmer uses the same notes from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and also Louis Armstrong's We Have All the Time in the World is used for the film's closing credits, and the line "We have all the time in the world" is at the beginning, and it's a great foreshadowing for how the film's going to play out. And another great foreshadowing is also in the gun barrel at the beginning. We see Bond shoot, but the classic blood dripping down the gun barrel, it doesn't come. Instead, it sort of fades into the snowy landscape to the opening scene, and I get the impression that Bond's shot didn't hit, and that the man behind the gun barrel finally got him. So that's a great foreshadowing to Bond's eventual self-sacrifice. But yeah, I was tearing up during that final moment with Craig's Bond. He performed the hell out of that, and it was a really touching and moving moment. And it's probably the best ending to a Bond film I've seen, in terms of the emotional impact that it has. And what's also really heartbreaking is to see the reaction of all the other characters that have been with Bond throughout the entire series react to his death. That's one of the key elements to a great death scene, is showing the reaction of other characters to the character's death. And that really lifts the tragic nature of it all very well. And yeah, so I could talk about the beauty of Bond's passing in the end all day. But I'll say nothing but this. It was a great way to send his character off. And it was a higher emotional note that the character needed to go out on. The end of Spectre, it just didn't feel right to me. It was too easy, if you guys get what I'm saying. Not that I wanted like a terrible, like brutally horrific end to Craig's character. I just wanted something a little more substantial. And No Time to Die definitely brought that to the table. But with all the parallels to Majesty's Secret Service and themes aside, action sequences, performances, absolutely incredible. My favorite one in the entire film is the one with Ana de Armas, who is so charming and so enjoyable to watch in this film. She does a fantastic job in the role of Paloma. It was one of the funner sequences in the film. That Cuban shootout. The excited and nervous aspect of her character is really entertaining to watch. Like, it's my first job. Like, you're James Bond and I'm working with you. Like, I thought that was really charming. And Craig and Armas have great chemistry, and that's obviously apparent because they work together on Knives Out. But it was one of the most entertaining scenes in the film, and it was a great action set piece. But my other favorites, of course, include the opening sequence before the opening credits. That took us through a little journey. Like, we get a mention of Vesper from Casino Royale within the film's first 5 to 10 minutes. And that instantly reestablished Craig's journey up until that point. And of course, he visits Vesper's grave. The explosion caught me completely off guard. That was a great way to start off this thrilling car chase that comes after it. And Bond's Aston Martin. We get to see it do a donut spin for the first time with freaking machine guns on it. It was that was just so cool to watch. That was a fantastic opening, and the opening credits followed. And my thoughts on Billie Eilish's No Time to Die, they still kind of remain the same. I think it's a great song. I don't think it fit with the tone of No Time to Die. And it might be a hot take. It might be an unpopular opinion. But I really wanted something like a You Know My Name-esque song to send Craig's Bond off. Since Skyfall, and I hate to reiterate this for like the third time on the podcast, but maybe those listening will have heard this for the first time. I think ever since Skyfall, using a somber piano notes, sad song for the opening of a Craig Bond film, I think it was only effective in Skyfall. I listened to Radiohead's Spectre, and I think that also would have been a good song for Spectre. But for No Time to Die, to do it for the third time, to have a I've lost everything, and I believed in you, and you betrayed me, like that's a whole theme with Craig's Bond, and I understand the importance of that, but something as subtle as the lyric from Chris Cornell's You Know My Name, the lyric being, if you come inside, things will not be the same. Like, subtle lines like that, and not having the entire song about that theme would be pretty cool. And I feel like Craig's Bond deserved more of an electric, bombastic send-off. I still think No Time to Die is a great song on its own, and I'm pretty sure for most people it'll fit quite well with No Time to Die, but it just didn't quite sit with me. Maybe my opinion will change on it once I rewatch the Craig series as a whole, but I still feel the same about it. Of course, I have to talk about Rami Malek as Safin. And Safin, he's a good villain. He serves the story well. He is very intimidating in some sequences. There's a scene in particular, his first re-encounter with Madeline after forever. There's this really brilliantly written scene between the two where he becomes the therapist instead of her. Like, I thought it was a really cool scene, and he's very intimidating. He's also kind of creepy also. And Rami Malek does a great job with that. And the opening scene also was really intense. I love the shot of Safin walking towards that cabin in the snow. It was so chilling. And I didn't mean that. Chilling, ice, snow. Okay, whatever. And the rest of the performances are great also. Naomi Harris, Ben Whishaw, Ralph Fiennes, they all do amazing in their roles. And Lashana Lynch also, great banter with Craig's Bond. I loved their interaction, and I loved their thoughts on the 007 number and what MI6 means to them. I really loved their exchanges on that. And I didn't feel like she was as intrusive as most audiences who had seen the trailer and thought her character to be. She's a welcome addition to the cast, and really a great springboard for Craig, kind of just like to bounce back and forth. Like, there was nobody who came out on top of the other. Like, sometimes someone would have the last word, and sometimes the other person would have the last word. Like, I really liked their banters and exchanges. And Léa Seydoux is also brilliant in her role as Madeline. I think she acts the hell out of it. It's also important to note that No Time to Die is also kind of about Madeline too, in some way, shape, or form. Like, there's some plot threads that focus on her heavily, and she plays a very important role in the film. What's cool is that it still felt like a James Bond film, and you could still care about her character without it feeling too distracting from, James Bond, because it's a Bond flick. So I think in that regard, her character is written into the story quite well. Yeah, everybody does an amazing job in No Time to Die. Their performances are great. Action set pieces are top tier. And I'd like to address real quick what everybody is saying about the ending once more. This is something I actually forgot to mention. The film's ending doesn't mean the end of the James Bond character. And this might already be apparent to many, but since the credits show James Bond will return, Craig's line of Bond films stand on their own. Well, my interpretation is that they stand on their own, separate from the rest of the Bond films. His story is sort of like his own saga. And there's callbacks to previous films, sure, but it's always noted that his Bond has one story world that continues throughout the 5-film arc. And the next Bond film will go back to the anthology-esque Bond films that, Connery did and Moore did and Brosnan did. I don't think we'll see a linear Bond story like this for a long time. If they went with creating the next Bond film in the Craig universe as sort of like an aftermath, I don't think that would work. I love the actors in the Craig Bond era, and it's completely possible for Ben Whishaw to come back as Q or for Ralph Fiennes to come back as M, because they're both great. But to have a hint in the next Bond film saying that, oh, this is in the same universe as the Craig films, thus, people in the Craig films can come back, and, there's villains that can return, Spectre can come back. I don't want that to happen. I think it's better if they go back to Bond's storytelling roots, which is a more anthology-esque spy adventure series. Craig's Bond is a very unique iteration of the character. Casino Royale was the beginning to the story. He becomes Bond in Casino Royale. And he is Bond throughout Quantum of Solace. Although Quantum of Solace is sort of like a part 2 to Casino Royale, like it's a follow-up. He finds a quantum of solace in that film. He gets over Vesper's death by the end, and it's not supplementary content, but it's a great expansion on Craig's character from Casino Royale. And then we get into Skyfall, which has him being Bond in the beginning. He's been Bond for a while, but then he gets knocked off the grid, and eventually he comes back, and then it's the story of the technological times catching up with secret agents and how important they really are in the world and Bond's place in the world, and it's a very interesting story. To some extent, that's carried over into Spectre and No Time to Die with the whole digital way to hunt down bad guys and terrorists. Like in No Time to Die, M creates that tool, that technological tool to hunt down those who are hiding in the shadows, and it backfires. That thread is carried over from Skyfall. And then, of course, we get, Spectre, and that's kind of like Craig being Bond on his own until he finds Madeline, and then that's another major love interest that goes into No Time to Die, and No Time to Die is his conclusion. I think No Time to Die was a very effective way to close his chapter on Bond. And the ranking of the Daniel Craig films for me would probably be 5, Quantum of Solace, because I enjoy it, but it's not my favorite one. That's the least I can say. Even Daniel Craig himself thinks it's a bit muddled. Number 4, it was previously at my number 3, but number 3 is now No Time to Die. Number 2 and number 1, this is the answer that a typical Bond fan might give, but they're interchangeable. They can be Skyfall or Casino Royale. And honestly, with number 1, I'd go with Casino Royale. It's the one I've rewatched the most. The Madagascar chase is something I've broken the rewind button and the replay button watching. It's just such a brutal... I love it to death. I could talk about it forever. But yeah, so Casino Royale, Skyfall, No Time to Die, Spectre, Quantum of Solace. Yep, that's the Craig Bond era for me. I'd love to go more in depth into Craig's story arc, like Craig Bond's story arc. I'll probably do a video of it. I have a couple of video essays planned for the coming months, so I'll announce those when they need to be announced, but Craig's Bond is one of the topics I have in mind, for sure. And with that, that's No Time to Die, the spoiler discussion. That was a kind of off-the-top-of-my-head spoiler discussion. It wasn't really structured all that well, and I apologize for that, but there's a lot to talk about in terms of Craig's Bonds. There's a lot to love, and I could talk about it for quite a long time. But we do have to move on. I'm pretty sure we're already pretty deep into the podcast, which is why we're going to talk about Squid Game now. Squid Game, spoiler-filled, in case you didn't hear the introduction I did. Squid Game has taken the world by storm. It's become number 1 in pretty much everywhere. The only Halloween costumes I see on sale nowadays are the Squid Game soldier costumes. So it's become quite the popular show in only a month I think. I think it just came out last month. I saw it a couple weeks ago. I watched it over the period of like 4 days. And I gotta say, it's a really great show. It has top tier performances, it has a super engaging story. The production design is really good. Like, really good. I'm surprised they built all these sets, and I'm pretty sure some of it was green screen, but there are a lot of practical sets that are really well built. Like, rooms in a giant facility where people fight to the death. They don't really fight to the death, they play to the death. But that was a twist that I expected going into Squid Game. I hadn't seen a trailer or anything for Squid Game before watching it. But I thought, well, if there's a giant doll in the thumbnail with a bunch of people standing in a field, there must be some sort of brutal, murdery aspects for the show. And I was right. So, I mean, I guess it was kind of. It's a South Korean show also, and I think this will give even more exposure to South Korean cinema, maybe more so than Parasite. Because Parasite, I know, got a lot of people to start watching South Korean films, myself included. But I think Squid Game, most likely audiences will go straight to Battle Royale after seeing Squid Game. Although that isn't really South Korean cinema, that's Japanese. But Asian cinema in general, I think Squid Game will be sort of like a conveyor to most audiences to check out that side of cinema, which is fantastic. Take it from me. I've gone down the rabbit hole and I have seen countless brilliant pictures by amazing directors. And it's not that I hadn't seen anything from Asia before. Of course, Kurosawa is a big inspiration to me, and I've seen a lot of his films. And his films are some of my favorites of all time. But directors like Lee Chang-dong and of course Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook, like those guys, those are great directors. And I hope Squid Game introduces audiences to their films. But getting back on topic, Squid Game. The story as a whole, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very bingeable. I think it's going to be entertaining for everybody. There are some parts that I felt were a bit off. And I'm just going to go through them now. I'm going to get the negatives out of the way first. The main gripe I have is that it felt like to me that they could have cut out one episode of this show. And that was episode 8. I feel like it was a half an hour. I mean, it was probably a very important build-up for episode 9, but they could have just merged the two together into this 90-minute finale, which is what some shows do. I mean, with Netflix, you can just press the next episode button and it's kind of quick, but if it were a show that was released weekly, like with weekly episodes, I feel like that episode would have been a real divisive one. Because it's 30 minutes of build-up for episode 9, is basically what it is. But it also has a big character death in it, which was also kind of abrupt as well. I feel like the 3 characters that were left alive, they should have had one last game together as 3. But I guess it's kind of how the show plays out. The death of, I can't pronounce her name. I mean, I'm going to try. Sae-byuk, is that how you say it? Or Sae-byuk? I don't know. I thought her death was a bit abrupt. And I guess I was a bit desensitized after the whole glass game and the marbles episode. Like, I was a bit desensitized to so many characters dying at once. And her death, sure, it was impactful, but not as impactful as I thought it would be. Which, by the way, episode 7 and episode 6 are my favorite ones. The glass game was so intense. Episode 7 is also one of my favorite episodes because of the English or American actors. If you watch Squid Game dubbed, which I didn't, but I went back to episode 7, I watched the dubbed version. They sound exactly like the dubbed actors. That's not a good thing. You're supposed to sound different to the dubbed voice actors. Because the dubbed voice actors in Squid Game, it's really funny to watch Squid Game dubbed in English. It's the most hilarious thing you will ever do. But they were so goofy, and their line delivery was so off, and so, I don't know, like, they describe the events on screen like, oh, this is happening now. Oh, better watch out. This is happening now. Oh, indeed. Have another glass of wine. Oh no, I bet on number 69. Like, it was, it was really dumb. And I was laughing my ass off at it. And luckily, they didn't distract too much from the main drama. But another gripe I have, of course, is the twist at the end of the show, which is the old man was behind everything. and it kind of comes out of left field. I guess it's supposed to make him look like an antagonist and make us hate him, but he became so likable over the course of those episodes that I really just couldn't bring myself to see him as a villain. It's weird though. His performance makes you like feel for him because he's like this old guy who just wants to have some fun. It's kind of like heartbreaking because like he's reaching the end of his life and he just wants to have one last hurrah. Like it's just a bit melancholic, and it makes you kind of feel for his character. And having that incorporated into the twist, it just didn't really work for me. And of course, if you watch the episodes 1 and 4, I think it's the tug of war episode, you'll see that he's having the time of his life, and it's not because he's just a crazy old man. It's because he actually knows what's up. So I thought those were subtle hits, like him not having the handcuffs on in the tug of war, so he could have just let go and let the other people tumble to the ground. Although I don't know how that would have played out for everybody watching. Like, hey, the old man's alive. Like, why aren't you guys killing him? Why are you guys taking him away? Like, it's like a couple plot holes here and there. And another thread that I thought was a bit odd was the twist that the main man behind like the games, like the guy with the Darth Vader-esque mask. There's actually a really interesting like Star Wars-esque parallel with what I'm about to talk about. He's the detective's brother, the detective who, by the way, one of my favorite characters in the show. He's badass. He just infiltrates the entire complex. Like it really felt like his episodes really felt like this Metal Gear Solid-esque like stealth mission, and it was really cool. The reveal is that he's the detective's brother, and what's funny is that I actually thought about it. Like after episode 4, there's an episode where it ends with the brother looking through the archives and finding his brother, but it was a fleeting thought because I didn't think that they would actually pull it off. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd be a shock value, but I don't think it would be like they have to build it up. Like it can't just kind of happen out of nowhere. And it kind of did happen out of nowhere. Interesting parallel with Luke and Vader. Like he's like, come with me, and brother's like, no, I'm not gonna come with you. And then kind of like the brother shoots him and he falls off a cliff, kind of like how Luke falls in Cloud City. Like, I don't know. It was, and then like the whole voice modifier, like Darth Vader mask that he has on. I thought it was pretty cool. Still, I mean, that was a bit of a out of left field twist as well. But another thing is that I'm already thinking, oh, they must do a season 2 of this. But I've been told that the actors' schedules are so full that it's near impossible for them to like organize themselves and to like get together for a second season anytime soon because they're all off shooting different shows and movies. So it looks like we're gonna have to wait a little while for season 2. But if the detective comes back somehow, I just don't feel like there was a big twist. Like I didn't feel all that shocked. Like I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, it's the brother, it's fine. But yeah, my favorite characters, let's see here. My favorite character, well, the old man's one of my favorite characters, and episode 6 is actually like one of my favorite episodes, the Marble episode, because it was so sad the way Ji-hoon, the main character, who by the way is acted amazingly well, that episode made me really feel for the old guy because he kind of looks like he has dementia, and he's like, oh, this is where I grew up, and like I'd love to keep playing. Like, was it odd or even? Like, I thought that was really sad. And well, we didn't actually see him get killed, but it was pretty heartbreaking. And then another heartbreaking part of that episode was the two girls, having that one girl kind of sacrifice herself so that the other one could live. By the way, brilliant actress. Actually, both amazing actors. One of the actors, it's her first time acting, apparently, and she knocks it out of the park. And the other actor, I mean, she's great as well. There's this subtle moment where she's about to die, and she has like this terrified look on her face, and then she smiles, and it all goes away. And then her smile drops, and it all comes back. I thought that was brilliant. But yeah, episode 6 was great. And yeah, so my favorite character, the old man, the girl for sure, she's great. And also Sang-woo, the super smart guy in episode 6. Like, he uses all his intelligence and like pleading to persuade Ali, poor Ali, I love that guy too, to like give him all his marbles and like trust him, and like he's on another plane of like intelligence from everybody else. Like he thinks things out. He was like my favorite character until, well, episode 8 when he kills Saibyuk. That was a very abrupt shift in his character, but one that had kind of been building for the past, like, 3 or 4 episodes. Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters, too. And my favorite scene in the entire show is actually, it's between 3, actually. It's between the first time Fly Me to the Moon plays and the red light, green light scene. We get this really subtle wink, like, teaser as to who to focus on in the later episodes. Like, it flashes between, like, that gang leader, like, that super tough guy, to the girl, to the smart guy, to then to back to Ji-hoon. Like, there's a great teaser there. And, of course, Ali saving his life. Like, that was super tense. And then another scene is the ending of the glass game. There's this shot that lingers for a long time, and I've actually seen someone talk about it where it was, like, a too long of a shot and it was out of place. I thought it was a great way of showing, like, oh my god, like, out of 400-something people, there are 3 people left in the game. And it's this shot where glass explodes and there's shards in the air and it slowly pulls back to reveal, like, the 3 characters that are left. Like, it's just those 3 that we know. Although the music was a little cheesy, like the horror violin, that was a little too much. But still, it was a cool shot. I really like that moment because that kind of signifies that we're in the end of the show and it's ending. And my final favorite scene was actually the ending of the Tug of War episode. I really liked that as a cliffhanger with, of course, Sang-woo saying, like, everybody take 3 steps forward, we're going to make them trip. Like, that was a really fun episode. And, well, like I said, if this were a weekly series, I feel like episode 3 with that cliffhanger would have been amazing. Or the Tug of War episode, whatever episode that was. I feel like that would have been a great cliffhanger. So yeah, Squid Game, I mean, it's really great. I mean, there's a couple things that I just didn't enjoy about it, twists and whatnot, but it's a very bingeable show. I'm glad it's getting as popular as it is. I'd like to check back on it like a year or 2 later and see how it's doing after that. Yeah, Squid Game. Although I'd take a point off because Squid Game, there's no squids. What's the point? Yeah, Squid Game talk aside, it is, well, we're nearing the end of this episode. But there is one last thing, actually 2 last things, 2 more things I'd like to talk about here. One being one of my most anticipated films of the year, Spencer. I finally got to see it at the San Diego International Film Festival. By the way, great film festival, great audience. Loved it, loved every minute of it. I saw a couple more films, which I'll talk about in a second here. But Spencer is it's directed by the same guy behind Jackie with Natalie Portman, which is a great film. Everybody should check it out. And it stars Kristen Stewart in the lead role as Diana Spencer. And I remember the announcement of this getting a lot of backlash. Like, there was more criticism than support. And I took that criticism with a grain of salt because, well, we can look at Robert Pattinson, first of all. I'm not just going to make this comparison because everybody makes it, like, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson were in Twilight, therefore they're bad actors. It's not a good claim to make. It's like saying Adam Sandler was in, Jack and Jill, and he's a terrible actor. He's not a terrible actor. He does great in Punch Drunk Love and Uncut Gems. Or Nick Cage, like, there's some films he's in where he's just not good, and there's some films where he's great. Sometimes it's the film itself and not the actor. Although sometimes it is the actor and not the film. But I think Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson got a really bad rep for quite a while. Robert Pattinson, of course, has made his huge comeback. He's a freaking Batman now. And I'm going to segue into that in a second because I want to talk about that trailer. But he was in The Lighthouse, he was in Good Time, he was in a bunch of great films. Kristen Stewart, I can't say I've seen many of her films. In fact, I think Spencer is like the 2nd film or 3rd film I've seen of hers. I remember having seen Speak because I saw Chris Stuckman's video on it, and he gave it a lot of praise, so I decided to check it out, and Kristen Stewart's great in that film. And then, of course, Spencer, the announcement came out. And then I saw the trailer. And I was completely sold. And my hype kept escalating for months and months. And finally I got to see it last Friday. And she is phenomenal in the role of Diana. She is phenomenal. She completely transforms into this character that I think she would relate to a lot as an actress because both Diana and Kristen Stewart had a lot of media exposure in their lives and almost too intrusive of an exposure. And I think that character aspect of Diana really, really spoke to Kristen Stewart as an actress. There are a lot of moments in the film where she becomes unrecognizable. Like, she just becomes Diana. And Same thing with all the other actors. They're incredible. They look similar enough to their historical counterparts, and their performances are that good to where everything in this film like lives and breathes its time period. Like even the production design and the cinematography. Same DP as Portrait of Lady on Fire. It has sort of this dated 90s aesthetic aspect to it that's super warm and cozy, and it makes sense because it's like a Christmas film. I'm mentioning some of my points from my review. I gave it a plus because, yeah, I really loved it. It makes you feel like you're watching a memory, and it's a delightful memory because there's a lot of pastry-colored palettes in this film, and the underlying dramatic tones of the film make that safe exterior kind of like this deceitful cover to the deep emotional core of this film. The wardrobe was also spectacular. I mean, Kristen Stewart, she looks phenomenal in every outfit she wears, but for everybody else, super authentic to the time period. Every aspect of this production is probably the best you're going to get in terms of a period piece. The story itself is, well, there's an opening line to the film, which I'm not going to say here because there's some of you I know who want to go into this blind. It's not exactly what you might be expecting in terms of biopic. There's not going to be like flashbacks to historical events and like recreations of historical events in real time just for like audience spectacle. Like, oh, like this happened and she's reenacting it and she's super good. Like, that doesn't happen. This is actually like historical figures. This is the other side to them, rarely seen anywhere. It's what they're like behind closed doors, when they're far away from society, when they're in their weekend retreats just by themselves, how they interact with each other. I think that's one of the most intriguing aspects of Spencer. It's one of the best films of the year, and it's the only portrayal of Diana that I've seen on film. And I'm actually hesitant to watch other portrayals because I'll be comparing Kristen Stewart's performance to other actors instead of vice versa, which is probably what a lot of people are doing. I haven't seen The Crown, unlike many. I really just did my research. I just looked at Diana's interviews and the way she spoke, and I really like how Kristen Stewart portrays the more fragile side of her and kind of explores her subtleties and makes this iteration of Diana really personal and real. Yeah, Spencer, it has the best female performance all year I've seen. There is one contender that I will talk about in a second. But honestly, Kristen Stewart deserves every accolade that comes her way. She did a fantastic job. Spencer's phenomenal. When it comes out in November, I highly suggest you guys go and check it out because it's actually really good. So, yeah, what I was saying about other female leads maybe going up against Kristen Stewart. Since I was at San Diego International Film Festival, I also got to see The Humans, Belfast, and The Lost Daughter. The Humans was great. I thought I enjoyed it a lot. Belfast was pretty good also. It was a great biographical / period piece, it kind of reminded me of Cold War in a way. And I saw, finally, The Lost Daughter, Maggie Gyllenhaal's directorial debut, which was fantastic. And Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley, they're both kind of the leads in that film. Olivia Colman does amazing. She really gives an outstanding performance there, and that's the only lead actress I'd see this year going up against Kristen Stewart, really. The Lost Daughter and Spencer, both with fantastic female leads. I'm going to write my reviews for The Humans, Belfast, and The Lost Daughter this week and discuss them with you guys once I'm done thinking about them, because they're still stewing in my mind. I still have some thoughts I need to develop on them. But they were all great. And what was also great, and what I mentioned for a brief second earlier, we got a new trailer for the Batman, and holy, like, I'm looking at my notes right here. It just says holy, and then I slammed my hand on the keyboard. It's just a bunch of capital letters together. That's basically what I felt about the trailer. It looks absolutely incredible. This might be the first time I'm actually hyped for like a superhero movie, like really, really hyped. Like, of course I'm hyped for a Spider-Man in December, but for a standalone character film, this is it looks really great. And I've heard reviews of screenings with people saying like it's more of like a horror film, like it's like a detective horror film that runs like almost like 3 hours long. And I see a lot of people comparing it to like Zodiac and and Seven, like Fincher films. And it has that look for sure, and Paul Dano as the Riddler looks amazing. He reminded me a lot of his character in Prisoners, actually, in this trailer. He kind of like wears glasses and is kind of hunched over and like a little creepy. Like, I think he's going to do a fantastic job as a Riddler, and I think Riddler is a great villain, great Batman villain. And if you're going to make a mystery Batman movie, I think the Riddler is a good choice. Robert Pattinson looks amazing as Bruce Wayne, and we got to see Andy Serkis also as Alfred, and what's her name is Catwoman, or Selena Kyle, also looks great. And, of course, my man Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, which I think is a great casting choice. The one thing I noticed in the trailer that I'm interested in seeing is how brutal this Batman is going to be. Because there's this shot in the trailer of Catwoman watching Batman beat up somebody, and her reaction is very fearful. And I think this film will put the fear back into The Dark Knight, because in the Nolan films, sure, he was a threat, but he was never terrifying. And I feel like in the Batman, he's going to go beyond. Okay, that was an unexpected Batman Beyond joke. I feel like he's going to go beyond the other iterations in terms of brutality and scare factor. There's also another shot in the trailer where Alfred goes like, "Dear God," or something like that. And I don't think he's reacting to a crime. The Riddler does. I think he's just reacting to what Batman does. I'd really love to see like him going all out and just learning to have some restraint by the end of the film, maybe, or maybe just going even darker. Because it looks like a truly disturbed Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. Looks like he's more Batman than Bruce, actually. We only see Bruce like a few times, and he looks pretty messed up. Like, you get to see like scars on his face and like on his back, and looks pretty brutal. I really hope this becomes a standalone sort of series. The Batman and its sequels, I hope it's more of like the Raimi trilogy, where it kind of stands on its own. It's not going to be connected to any universes or anything like that. I saw the latest Flash trailer, and there's a lot of Batman in there. There's Ben Affleck's Batman and Michael Keaton's Batman, of course. And I hope Robert Pattinson's Batman doesn't get integrated into the DCEU in that way. Because I feel like his films and the tone of his films, like, I hope those characters stay within those films. I hope that tone remains consistent, and there's no, like, multiversal sort of stuff happening. Because I don't think that would fit. I've been rambling a lot this episode. I'm just super excited about everything I've been seeing and everything I'm going to see. And with that, I'm going to close out today's episode. It was great talking about everything. This is the first time I've talked about 3 different like pieces of media in one episode. But I do have a small announcement to make. There's a video I've been thinking about for a long time that has to do with Robert Eggers' films and Ari Aster's films. There's a similarity between their 2 films. A certain cut that they do near the end of their films that I'm going to discuss as well. I think it's very interesting, and it's a great effective tool that a filmmaker can use in a horror film. And I don't think it's been used before. So stay tuned for that, guys. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at James24Frames. I also do updates for any new YouTube videos or any new podcast episodes, so that's another reason to follow. And I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really use it all that much. It's James24Frames. If you want to follow it, go on ahead, but can't say I'm going to be too active over there. Instagram is kind of my home in terms of social media-ness. And, well, Halloween is right around the corner, and I'll think about maybe doing a spooky movie for the next episode here, because it'll fall really close to Halloween, and I'm pretty excited for it. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you after the credits.